so that if we do have any direct Q&A, we've got a recording of it. So I hope that's okay that I'm recording it. What I'm going to do with the recording is download it to my computer. It comes out down as an MP4 file. I'll download it to my computer, and then I'll make it available to anybody that missed the class, and to let them just hear if there's any questions that we dealt with. So is that okay with you all?
Yeah,
Yep.
Good idea.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So any other thoughts, questions?
Not to me.
Great noise. What is it I can hear?
I don't know. There's some static.
Is that what it is? Yeah. It sounds like something's eating popcorn or something. Okay, well, as I promised that we can, I mean, without going through a PowerPoint lecture, I just thought that I could pick out the main points of the chapters that you read that's part of this week's reading, and sort of focus in on the main points. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay, all right. Well, of course, have you all read it, or are you in the middle of reading it, or have you not started reading? Any answers okay. I just need to know where you are.
I'm in the middle.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm on chapter 7.
okay,
Beginning chapter 7, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. We're at beginning chapter 7 is mine.
okay, all right. Well, essentially, I mean, chapter 5 deals with the whole question of cooperation and teamwork. I'm going to hope that my let me see, make sure I got the right. I'm having trouble doing both, seeing you and doing the PowerPoint, but I'll get it. Just hang on a minute. Okay. So we're basically recognizing, and this sort of the core of the course is that cooperation essentially is the essence of teamwork, and that it's the cooperation amongst the members that makes for a productive team. But that's the ideal situation, and in many situations, people are not necessarily cooperative for many reasons. There's many reasons why there's a mixed motive situation, which is probably more the situation that all of us find ourselves in, that people have a desire for cooperation, but there's also some competition, and that creates this kind of tension within the group where people become competitive either between each other or between the group and other groups in general. So you find yourself with multiple reasons why competition emerges in groups, even though we're all saying we're a team and we're not in competition with each other. And primarily this is because we grow up in an individualistic culture, that everything that we see around us is about you and about succeeding and about winning and about performing. And in the Western civilization, the Western culture, that individualistic position leads to competition. It's like from kindergarten on, we encourage kids to shine and to perform and to stand out, and always with a sense that if I'm number one, you got to be number two. So we have to fight for that position. So we come from an individualistic culture. But in addition to that, we are, personality-wise, some of us are more competitive and some of us are more cooperative. So if you've got a group full of people who are more competitive, then that's what you get in the group. So but the most important thing that we've got control over, because we usually don't have any control over the personalities, and we certainly don't have any control over the culture that we're in. So the one thing that we do have control about is the reward system. So if you reward people for their collaboration, that's what you're going to get. And if you reward them for their individual performance, that's what you're going to get. And you're also, in that situation, likely to get competition. So a lot of HR, managerial HR approaches actually encourage competition when what they really want is collaboration. And they do it by the way that they give bonuses, the way that people get promoted, the way that all the little rewards that you get, the perks, the best office or whatever, is all based on an individual's performance. And then at the same time we say, but we want you all to work as a team. So there's a built-in contradiction if your reward system rewards individual achievement, and at the same time you're saying you want teamwork. But at the same time, if you reward teamwork and not individual achievement, then you encourage social loafing, which is this sort of sense that, let me move straight. Well, I'll go back a bit and slow down a little bit. But you also get problems with competition because when people are competitive, they don't communicate very well. They tend to, you think about the communication and what needs to go backwards and forwards with the group, you think of that as a currency. In a competitive situation, the currency is to hold on to more information for yourself because that's going to make you more likely to succeed. But if you're in a situation where the more that the information is shared within the group and within the team, then the encouragement has to be on good communication. So there's often communication in teams between, am I communicating to get the best thing for myself, or am I communicating to get the whole team on the same page and develop a sense of wholeness? And into this comes a whole issue of trust. And if I think that you're really competing with me and really not on my team, then I'm gonna not tell you all the things that you need to know to succeed. So we begin then to not trust each other. The more that we don't trust each other, the worse our communication becomes. The worse our communication becomes, the less we trust each other. And so we get this vicious cycle into a situation where the competition has created a situation where good teamwork is not likely to happen. And so here we are in a culture that encourages competition, but at the same time, increasingly in our workday situations, there's more and more use of teams. So in a sense, we're all in a bit of a contradiction, where a little cognitive dissonance, where we're saying to everybody, we're going to reward you for teamwork because that's what gets things done. And then at the same time, we create reward systems where we're all competing with each other. And I just got back from, Vincent, you didn't hear this part, but I just got back from 2 days with the faculty on an off-site. And one of the things that we were talking about there was creating this team that with the new president and the new provost. But at the same time, we then go on and we give faculty awards, and all of the awards are for individual achievement. None of the awards were for collective achievement. So we had this award for the Scholar of the Year and this award for the Service Awards, and all of them were for individual achievement, and yet not one of those awards anybody could have got by themselves, because all of them relied really on being in a university that supported them. So part of what we deal with when you work with teams and when you train teams and when you consult with teams is to get to the bottom of this. It's essentially a trust issue. How to build trust so that the communication, the planning, the collaboration is likely to go ahead well. And there's loads of benefits from cooperation that you can measure pretty easily. That the level of motivation goes up when people cooperate. people are supportive in their communication. So when you see this in, say, in a good basketball game, when somebody does, when one of the people, when they're in the zone, when one of the people does something really well, everybody else says, good, great shot. They congratulate each other, they give each other high fives and so on. There's a celebration of everybody's work, and this makes everybody motivated. And so you get in a cooperative team, you get many more of those kinds of interactions where, attaboy, good girl, kudos, and not in a phony way, but in a real sense of I share in your success. And that in a cooperation situation, you get a lot more of that kind of communication. You also get a lot more coordination, meaning you don't duplicate things, because there's enough communication where I know not to do job X because I can trust that Barbara's going to do it. Because we've been through this before, I can trust her, I know she comes through, and so I don't have to put my energy over there, I can put it over somewhere else at another task. And if that trust is there, you've got higher satisfaction and overall higher performance. And so a good team has that improved coordination, it has less tension, less arguments, although as we've talked later on, arguments are not necessarily a bad thing, and greater cohesion. And what we mean by cohesion is that there's a real clear sense of we, and a real clear sense that we're together on this, and that there's those people who are different or are not in our team, and then there's those people who are in the team, and if you're in the team, we've got your back. And we've got this sense of belonging to the group. All of those are benefits of cooperation. The problems with cooperation, which I think we saw in the NASA video, did you see that? Have you had time to see that? Where you've got this conformity, this groupthink, where and then the Abilene paradox, which is famous in social psychology, where nobody wants to challenge the first person to say something, and yet they end up doing something that nobody would have done if they'd have done it on their own. And this has been shown over and over again in business research, is that particularly if the first person to talk is the powerful one, nobody challenges that person and then says, oh, okay, well, that's okay with me. And before you know it, the whole group has gone down a path that it shouldn't have gone down or wasn't the best plan, and including something as tragic and as disastrous as the shuttle explosion. And you can see from that video of which is just simulation, but it's from recorded reports of the actual conversation, that they end up talking the engineer who doesn't think it's a good idea into distrusting his own sense of reality. And that, I don't know whether you've ever had that experience, but I certainly have, where you start out with thinking that there's 7 different opinions in the room, and as the conversation goes on, gradually the opposition begins to drop away and everybody begins to think on the same page, and before you know it, you've got a shared reality which is not necessarily reality at all. And so that's one of that conformity and also the kind of crowd mentality. You get that kind of crowd mentality where nobody's willing to take on the status quo. So that and often is what people feel in that kind of situation, and I've been in that situation many times, where everybody's moaning and whining on the sidelines because nobody's taken on the main idea and they don't like it, but they don't question the conventional wisdom, and before you know it, you're making bad decisions and people don't feel happy about them. And that's a disaster in an organization, because it's a setup for people to feel resentful and at the same time not be all that productive. Vincent.
I was, watching that video, it almost felt like there was pressure, and I don't know if it was group pressure or just pressure of going against the grain. But when you saw them, when they were asking them, hey, should we do it, yes or no, and they kind of said, yeah, let's go for it. They said it they were almost uncomfortable saying it because they knew it was the wrong decision.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, I think that's a good point, is that you can feel inside that there's something not right, but to actually challenge the conventional wisdom takes being willing to take a risk. And there's many situations in which the risk wouldn't be that big a deal, and there are other situations where the risk is a lot bigger. I mean, taking on the boss is often a bigger risk than taking on one of your coworkers. And so, yeah, you're right. And people kind of know that they shouldn't be going along with this decision, but the cost of challenging it sometimes seems too big. Yeah. Any other thoughts about groupthink or the problems with cooperation? One of the things that I always come up with is that my experience with Americans, particularly when I first moved to America, was that Americans were more worried about being too conformist than British people were. British people were much more passive about going along with the group. So if there was one or two people in the group that said, let's do this, most Brits would go, okay. Whereas Americans, in my experience, were much more likely to be a little combative or competitive and say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should do that. So for a long time, I saw Americans as very individualistic with regards to groups. I think less so these days, but I think there's cultural differences between how common groupthink is, depending on, and I think there's also cultural differences amongst different professions. I think my profession of psychologists, we'll go along with anything. I mean, we're very passive, whereas engineers tend to be much more assertive. So that movie where they're about the NASA group, it's unusual because they're all engineers. So it was interesting to me that the engineers also were falling into this groupthink mentality. So it doesn't, we're all susceptible to it. So we don't need to read this up. It's basically we've already summarized most of this. Okay, so the key there then is conformity versus competition, is the mixed motive situations, and the way in which groups can either be more individualistic and competitive, or can be more of a group risking too much conformity. Clearly then, the next thing in the book was about communication, and let me think right. You can't have a group, well, you can't have a group without communication between the group members. Even if it's non-verbal communication, there's communication going on all the time. And the way Levy talks about it is he talks about communication from the point of view of a transactional model. And he means by that there's senders and there's receivers, and then between those two there's a message. And that the senders have characteristics that make their message more trustworthy, more effective. One is that the sender is a credible person. So we're much more likely to receive a message if it's coming from someone that we see as credible. Also, that we see as attractive. It turns out that when in lots of social science studies, if we think somebody's attractive, we're much more likely to accept what they're saying to us. And of course, if you think about credibility and attractiveness, look at the commercials on the TV for selling you just about everything. Credible are doctors, 5 out of 6 doctors say, and attractive is either an attractive guy or an attractive woman. So both they're using those characteristics to make it more likely that you will receive the message, that you will take the message seriously. But then there's you. There's whether you're interested in the message. There's whether or not the message makes sense to you. There's whether you understand the message. If you don't understand the language, the message is meaningless because you can't make any meaning out of it. So there's factors that that are in the audience that have to do with whether the message is received. I mean, it's enough to say that in a group, if you think about a group in some kind of company, kind of factory, and in comes a CEO, and the CEO has something to say, many people are going to listen to what the CEO has to say. But if the person who comes in is middle management, and the middle management is talking about things that only middle management are interested in, the janitors probably pay no attention at all. They're off on one side talking about something else. So who you are is also an important part of this transaction between a sender and a recipient. And then so is the kind of message that's coming. So if the message is angry and attacking, that's a very different kind of transaction than if the communication is supportive and caring. And all of these factors go into whether or not the group is has good communication. So another way to talk about this is to say that the climate for the communication will influence whether the communication is effective or not in a group. And so we might call this a team culture, if you like, that all of us know when we're in a team or a group that there's different feel to different groups that we're in. That some groups feel very judgmental. They feel like, you know, if I'm going to say anything, I'm going to get judged. Others feel more like our communication is more just description. So I could say, if I was in an evaluation situation, I might say, that meeting we just had was terrible. Or I could say, I got really tired because the meeting went on so long. So one of them is a description of what I went through in the meeting, and the other one is a judgment about what I thought of the meeting. Over the life of a group, the more judgmental communication is, as a general rule, the less trust there is in the group, the less likely people are going to speak up and say and make their contribution. And the more descriptive is going to be more encouraging people to describe their own experience, to describe what's going on for them. So whether the communication is evaluative or descriptive influences everybody in the group. Likewise, whether or not the transactions have to do with control. Am I speaking to control the situation, or am I speaking to solve a problem? And if most of the communication is problem solving, you get a very different outcome from the group than if most of the communication is intended to control things. And you can see this in groups. There are some managers who only want to control. They want to make sure that George doesn't speak because he's got an idea that I don't like, or I want to make sure that I hear from the people that I like. So I'm there sort of doing traffic control, but in order to control the flow of the communication. Alternatively, we could be encouraging everybody to get involved in problem solving. Again, which one of those you have will influence the climate of communication. Strategy versus spontaneity, that's basically when I'm speaking in order to bring about some end that I already have in mind, or whether I'm speaking to encourage all of us to be spontaneous and speak up and be creative. Neutrality versus empathy. So am I taking an objective, hands-off kind of way, kind of stance, or am I really trying to empathize with everybody's position? This again affects the communication quality in the group. The superiority versus equality. Is it hierarchical? Do some people have more power than others? Do some people have, some people's opinions count more than others? I think most of us women have been in groups where you say something and there's no reaction, and some guy says the same thing and everybody says, that's a good idea. So that also affects the quality of the communication. And certainty versus provisionalism. Are we saying things that communicate, I know what I'm talking about, this is the truth? Or are we raising questions? Are we saying, I wonder what it would be like if? So that kind of tone also affects, and all of these things together all the time are influencing how good the communication is between the members of the group. And what we're really saying here is, the better the communication, the more effective the group is going to be. And in particular, a subset of this has to do with psychological safety. It's often overlooked by managers and people in leadership roles, particularly if they have more power or they have a sense that they've got more power, to not recognize how important it is for people to feel psychologically safe in a group situation. In a sense, we're all vulnerable when we're in a group. That it's a very primitive part of human behavior. We don't like to be shamed. We don't like to be embarrassed. We don't like to be humiliated. We don't like to lose our dignity. And this is not a matter of having thin skin. This is a very human thing. We all need dignity. We all need to feel respected. And we all need to feel that we're free to express our feelings and our thoughts without getting jumped on, without getting judged, without getting criticized, without getting humiliated. And if we don't have that, we don't talk. Or we talk in coded ways, or we talk we're sarcastic, or we're combative, or we try to dominate the conversation. And so psychological safety is probably one of the most underrated aspects of creating a climate in a group where everybody's going to contribute and everybody's going to bring their best self to the group. And this, of course, brings in the matter of trust and mutual respect. And as it says on the slide, and this is particularly important if you're giving somebody feedback about something. If Joe does something that didn't work, and I say, well, that was a stupid thing that you did, or, well, we don't do that around here, you can guarantee he's not going to come forward to volunteer to do anything in the future. He's just not, because we're all inside, we're all still 6 years old. And that's actually good, because it means that we're emotionally alive. Vincent, do you have a question?
Actually, no, but I'm having a challenge seeing what you're showing. I just sent out a group chat, and it looks like others also are seeing a gray screen.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah. I think you're on chapter 6, right?
Well, sorry?
You're on chapter 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm following along from the text, but because I can't see your screen.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I mean, it's not good to know, but I'm glad you told me. Did you see it before? It
just happened like the slide before this.
Oh, really? Interesting. I think something did just happen. Let me see. I've now got an orange is it all gray or is it just half of the screen? All gray. You mute.
Most of it is gray. The very bottom, I can see a little bit of words there.
Okay. Now that's odd then.
Yeah, I think everybody else, in Leanne and
It's the same for you guys too, for Leanne and Barbara. Yeah.
Yes, it's all gray.
Huh. But
Yeah,
it
it's the same
but
for
it
me.
wasn't. Something happened because I've got this yellow frame on my screen so like it goes down as far as manage feelings, and then it doesn't cover that. Manage feelings is there, but now the yellow screen is coming and going. How odd. Well, these slides are from I took them from the slides from the lecture.
right.
So if I can't solve it, you can probably find okay, I'm going to end the slideshow and see what happens.
Oh,
What happened?
I can see a
Okay, we
slide.
could see all the slides now
Yep.
in smaller boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you can see them as the slide sorter. So can you see 2 or 3 slides there?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can actually read them from there. Can you read them from there? Is that
Yes.
big? Yeah?
Mhm.
Okay. So
Okay, good enough.
right, okay, where were we? We're on. Yeah, we were here, right? Facilitating team meetings. Okay.
Yep.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah, so let's just go to emotional intelligence. Apropos of what we were saying about psychological safety, the other dimension that's important is that the team members have a pretty high emotional intelligence. And without getting too far into the weeds on emotional intelligence, it's basically we're talking about self-awareness, we're talking about empathy, we're talking about emotional regulation. By that we mean if I get angry about something, I don't immediately fly off into a screaming rage, that I can recognize that I'm getting angry and I can count to 10 and I can calm myself down, I can self-soothe. So that's very important. And it's very interesting to me, again, that I think there's evidence that people these days have less emotional regulation. And that some of I imagine, Barbara, in your world, in your job, that you'll see a lot of people that don't have very good emotional regulation. And that's what gets them into trouble.
Yes.
Is that they don't know how to walk away from a problem, for example. Is that right?
Yep. And they continue to get themselves into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And so a good team can't, because psychological safety is so important, to have somebody in your team who doesn't have very good emotional regulation is a real problem, because they can easily fly off the handle and hurt somebody's feelings. And that's a situation which is very, very difficult to put right. So if you have to build a team, you do need to watch out that your team members have pretty high emotional intelligence, or if you don't have any control over who's going to be in your team, because in any work situations, you just have to work with who you have. You don't ask the group to do anything that would trigger people without having set up some rules ahead of time about what people do if they're going to get angry. You prepare for that. And so that's the emotional intelligence of the individual members of the group. But then there's also a team emotional intelligence. You know when you're in a team that has high emotional intelligence. It's a team where people clearly trust each other. There's usually a nice soft banter. There's usually a sense of support. How you doing? You know, how's your mom doing? Wow, I really liked it when you did that. And so you have this kind of sense of trust, and that even when the going gets tough, people don't bail on each other and don't abandon each other, but they hang in there, and they feel that they can handle stressful situations together. And so, and because that people's got have this higher emotional intelligence, they don't get into that many conflicts. They resolve them before problems get resolved, before they explode into real conflict. Or people take care of their own inner distress and don't expect the other person to solve it for them. So people are taking care of their own business as they go along. And again, that's a very important part of what makes for a good team. But another piece is that good teams often have a facilitator. They have somebody whose role it is to monitor this climate, who has to be sort of the person who is watching out for, is there somebody in the group who's emotionally unkind? Is there somebody in the group who's sarcastic, or is undermining other people emotionally, or insulting people, or being disrespectful? The facilitator's role is to be watching out for that, and where competition seems to be showing up, to encourage collaboration, to, if disruptive behaviors are going on, to call it, and not in an escalating way, but to call it in a way to say that's not going to be helpful, kind of a response. And that if there's differences of opinion, a facilitator needs to have a strategy for what they're going to do in conflict, difference of opinion situations. So, and that's going to be part of their repertoire as a leader. So sometimes you manage difference by making it an asset, by making sure that if you've got an extrovert and an introvert, that you make sure that they are both, that you use both sides of that dynamic to help you do what you want to do. And a facilitator sets the agenda, as we saw in the John Cleese video last week. You know, setting the agenda and signaling your intentions, that's an incredibly important part of corralling a group's attention to keep it all going in the same direction. And the facilitator is the person who is responsible for that. They also summarize any decisions that the group has made. One of the things that really dispirits groups is when you make a decision and the next time you meet, nobody can remember the decision that you made. That was covered in the video. Oh, well, didn't we decide that last week? Yeah, but John said we were going to do X. No, that was April that said that. This just drives groups crazy. Even though people may be polite and not say so, it's a very dispiriting thing. The facilitator can avoid that by just making sure that the important decisions are summarized and minutes are taken, so we can remember what we said last week and what we agreed to, so that we're not reinventing the wheel or arguing about who made the decision. And then also the facilitator makes what we call process comments. Looks at where we are and says, well, you know, there's lots of different ways to say this, but I might say something like, well, we seem to be really into the storming stage right now. This conflict is really, you know, we're fighting over little things right now, so let's talk about that. Let's see what's going on. Or I might say, wow, we got through a lot of work this morning, and maybe we don't want to do anymore because we don't want to burn out, or that may be enough. So the facilitator sort of acts as the orchestra leader and says, this is where we are, and helps the group decide, are we okay? Are we doing what we said we were going to do? Is everybody feeling okay with what we're doing? In that way, it's not, the group process stays in the foreground for people, so that they can see what's happening, they can hear what's happening, and they agree with each other about what's happening. And again, that's the facilitator's job. Any thoughts or questions? Have you ever, you guys facilitated groups, or have you ever been in that role where you have to facilitate a group?
Yeah, I facilitated groups. Actually, this is very interesting. It's nice to put words to what you see happening.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me to go, oh yeah, that I saw that happened. That's what we call it. So
Yeah,
it's great. It's fun.
yeah. Right. One of the things, so go ahead, Vincent.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say. I noted here that encourage you said encourage collaboration, and one of the things that you mentioned that I just jotted too was sarcastic, and as I like to have fun, and sometimes I have to monitor myself. I used to lead a sales team, and it's easy to sort of joke about somebody's mistake or make fun of somebody's fumbles and stuff. I had to catch myself and avoid from doing that, because that's not a good sign of a leader or a facilitator. So, but those are my experience.
It's I'm not suggesting, and I'm sure you're not, that we treat everybody like a baby, but I think it's important for us all to remember how sensitive we really are. We are people who want to be appreciated, and we want to be respected, and we want to be liked. And, a group can, and I've been in groups like this, where the tone is kind of sarcastic. Well, the Brits are famous for their sarcasm. But by that time, we know each other, we trust each other. I know that if this person over here makes a crack about being from England or whatever, that this is not disrespectful. If it's somebody I don't know and somebody who doesn't know me, then that's a different matter. So the important thing, I think, and you're going after this, is that we need to be careful about this. I'm not saying we need to be walking on eggshells, because there's situations where a sly remark is really funny, and it can loosen up. Humor is a very important part of a group, but I think it's a matter of where in the group it happens. So if it happens in the forming stage, that's probably too soon. If it happens in the performing stage, you're probably okay, because you've already worked through getting to know each other, learning to trust each other, getting your communications right, and by that time, the occasional snide remark is probably going to be seen as funny. But that kind of timing comes with practice, and it comes with it's a skill set, and it comes with realizing that you can actually read a group. There's plenty of signs there to tell you where you are if you pay attention. And as a facilitator of a team, it's very important that we get these skills. If there's anything that you get from this course in group dynamics, it will be these facilitating skills. Because all the rest is more detailed, but those are basic. So on to the communication skills. And again, these are very useful skills even for a relationship, not only for a group, So to ask questions, ask open-ended questions, so that you ask questions that can be answered with yes or no. So I don't say, do you like apples? I say, how do you feel about fruit? So how do you feel about fruit gives you an opportunity to say whatever you want to say about fruit. But if I say, do you like apples? You can say yes or no. And in a good group, there's very few questions that are yes or no answers. You want questions that are what I would call inquiry questions. They're an inquiry into our reality. Well, John, it sounded like you were saying to Mary that you didn't like what she'd done. Is that what you're saying, or is there something else there? That way he can decide at what level he wants to answer that question, but at least I'm putting out into the group something that I observed. So those kinds of inquiry skills where you're asking people to help you understand the group, to help you understand what the group is doing, it's really very helpful in getting the communication right in a group. So is listening. I mean, being able to paraphrase what you hear, being able to let the person know, look, I heard what you were saying, I understood what you were saying, or if I didn't, to ask the question, well, I'm not sure I understood what you were saying. But the important thing in here is that we need to listen, and we'll talk about this later in the course, but so many times people are listening not because they're trying to understand what you're saying, but they're listening so that they're setting up their own response. So they're listening to you only in order to come up with what they're going to say next. That's usually not very helpful in a group. What we need to know is what each person really thinks. And the way we find that out is by listening in a really skillful way. Also, the giving constructive feedback. Again, this is a skill set that anybody in any kind of organizational setting needs to have. Nobody wants to be criticized. We just have to face that. But feedback is different. Getting to know where you stand and getting to know what somebody else makes of what you're doing, that's absolutely solid gold. But it has to come in a way that indicates that that the person respects you, and that they're going to grant you dignity, and they're not going to. You're going to be allowed to save face. So learning how to give negative feedback in a way that doesn't humiliate the other person is a crucial task and skill, and all too rare. So many, and when you ask young managers what they dislike doing the most of them will say giving negative feedback, because none of us really like to do it. So if I don't like to do it and you don't like to hear it, then we're set up to have an awkward conversation. But if I can be graceful, if I can learn the techniques of giving feedback in a way that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings but is honest and authentic, then I've got a really valuable skill. And you can as it says here on the slide, one good way to give good feedback is to actually make it feed forward, to focus on the future. So when in my class, I think I might have already done this, and a tip for next week. I don't need to say, you did this badly, so don't do that again. I can just say, next week, if you do X, Y, and Z, you might get a higher grade. So the feedback is about what can you do better in the future. It's not about what you did in the past. So what if you did something in the past? It's over, it's gone. The feedback needs to be about how you can improve the future. And most people don't feel threatened by that. They don't feel hurt by that. They don't feel judged by that. They feel helped by that. So learning that skill in a group is really important too. And again, managing feelings, we've already talked about that a little bit, that if somebody is very emotional in a group, you want to be able to, as a facilitator, stay out of it emotionally. So that if somebody's really angry or somebody's really sad, the facilitator's role is to be there with them, but not engage to make it worse or escalate it or diminish it or say, oh, come on, get over that, or it's not that big a deal. But nevertheless can be there and allow the person to have a sense that their feelings are understood. And we all know this, but once your feelings are understood, then mostly they disappear. That once my anger is understood and somebody validates that I have strong feelings about something and that just is what it is, I can let them go. So again, another skill set is to be able to be with other people's feelings without negating them or inflaming them, and being or avoiding them. And that's a hard one to learn, because it's sometimes really hard when somebody's screaming at you in your face not to engage. But it doesn't help to do it anyway, but it also does hurt your feelings sometimes. And learning how to accept someone's feelings without evaluating them and saying, you know, you're overreacting. The worst thing you could say to someone who's angry is you're overreacting, because immediately they react even more over the top. But you can say, sounds like you're pretty angry about that. And that's an acknowledgement of the anger, but it's not engaging with it. So managing feelings is also an important part of this whole story for the facilitations of the group. And then in improving the emotional intelligence, which is essentially what we've really all been talking about so far, is that one way to improve the emotional intelligence of the group is that the group leader models that. So you model how to speak kindly and forcefully. You model empathy. You model your own emotional intelligence. You model being there as a full person, but at the same time helping the group do its job, getting done the work that the group has come together to do. And so and helping the group identify the things that it does that are the behavioral norms. So you know, we don't yell at each other in this group, or we show up on time, that there's no drop, you know, we don't drop in and drop out. Groups need norms, otherwise people start to get anxious if the group, then a facilitator sort of helps to do that. And then finally, a good facilitator would have a repertoire of, some of you have brought this up in the past, icebreakers, exercises that you can do to help people learn, and all the rest of it. So that's a whole other set of skills that the facilitator needs. So I think put that together for chapter 5 and chapter 6, and I think those two chapters sort of give you a sort of a fundamental box of tricks, attitudes, approaches, and so on, that are fundamental to any group, any team, any group project that you might want to get to work on. So I think at that I'll stop. I think we've all had enough facts now. Any questions based on what we've done? Is this helpful? Is this level of conversation helpful?
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe just somebody else to shut up.
Yeah,
So,
I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions from anybody before we sign off?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Vincent?
Professor, are we doing a group, I don't know, project, or was that part of the assignment, or?
Yes.
Yes, there is. Yes, good question. There is the groups are forming this week, and the project that each group has is listed there. What you're going to do is you're going to make a PowerPoint presentation. I took out the PowerPoint presentations from the book for the chapters that you guys are working on. So you're essentially going to make, as if you were Levy, you're going to make a PowerPoint presentation of the different subject matters that each group was assigned one subject matter. So you have to research it, you have to design the PowerPoint, and you have to do that together as a group. So all of the things that you would have to do in terms of creating the group, organizing the project, deciding what you're going to do, all of that will be done as a group. And then that will finish the end of week 3. So yeah, and it's a group project. And I'm not going to give you much more information than that because I want you to sort of take it on and see how it goes as a sort of a simulation of a project like you might have to do at work. Okay? All right.
Did you assign the groups?
Yes.
Okay, I must have missed that. Was that in an email?
No.
Okay.
Have you all seen that?
Yes.
It's on the side. It's on the at least on my computer. It's on the left-hand side, in the left-hand side column where there's all the different buttons, and there's one button that's groups, and there's group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. And you're in one of those groups. What's your last name?
Velasquez. I just saw it. I'm group 4.
Okay.
Sorry
Right.
about that.
Very good. Okay. Hi, Martin. I just realized we've got Martin here that I hadn't seen. We've got Cody here who hadn't seen. So at least they're...
Yeah, I'm a little late. I forgot it was at 6:30.
Okay, it's fine. Look, well, I recorded it, Martin, and I'm going to download the MP4 file. And if you're interested in listening to it, I know the problem with listening to tapes is that's another hour you have to be listening. But I will have a tape of it if you're interested.
Yeah, I am. I was going to ask how I can access the recorded, because I'm used to Collaborate, but Zoom is new to me.
Yeah, well, the reason I don't use Collaborate, even though it's got a few more bells and whistles that work, is that I don't think it's as nice an experience, and it's a lot more clunky. And I particularly like Zoom because I think it's a very handy technology. But the recording part of Collaborate is better. I agree with you. But I'll put in the announcements how to get the recording so that if you need to get the recording, you'll be able to go. Okay, I'm going to sign off. If any other questions before I sign off?
Thank you very much.
Okay, good night. Have a good weekend.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. End meeting.